In those 5 seconds of silence, thousands of people across Jakarta were probably doing something very similar. They just scroll away past through history, through information that are very important. They just scroll away from other people's opinions and lives without stopping long enough to think deeply. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 centuries ago, Jakarta was known as Sunda Kelapa, an important coastal port where people, cultures, and ideas met through trades. News traveled as fast as a sailing boat could take them, and life continued to go more slowly. And decisions were recorded through hard work, effort, conflict, and memories. Fast forward to today. As we all know, Jakarta has become a fast moving megacity with millions of residents that are connected by digital networks, electric railways, highways, and skyscrapers. As we all also know, is that next year, on June 22nd, Jakarta will celebrate its 500th anniversary, which marks 5 centuries of transformation from Sunda Kelapa into one of the most important urban centers in Indonesia. While approaching the 5th century of Jakarta, let us all ask ourselves an important uncomfortable question. Are we really being more informed, or are we merely being more distracted? And that it's one of the serious and great paradox of our era. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all living in a city that is overflowing with information and data. Yet, many of us are becoming more and more impatient with knowledge. Every day, our thumbs just traveled miles and miles of texts. But when our screen just goes off, suddenly our mind also goes blank. And that is one of the dangerous mistakes that we are experiencing in the today world. We are confusing the definition of consumption with knowledge, and we are confusing the meaning of reacting with leadership. Well, let us all be honest with ourselves. Let's take a moment to think of our daily routines. For example, on the Transjakarta, waiting in traffic on Sudirman, or maybe during lunches, or even late at night in bed. Our eyes are constantly moving from a headline to another. Our eyes constantly move from a short clip to another short file trend video, from breaking news into another notifications. And still, we really think that by that only we are staying informed. But let's call it what it truly means. It means skimming. Skimming feeds our impulses, while reading, on the other hand, it feeds our intellect. When we skim, we tend to move very quickly. And that means we didn't always absorb all the information. We see information, but we don't completely understand it. And if we only consume what an algorithm gives in front of us, we're not really choosing freely anything that we're thinking as freely as we believe. Because an algorithm is choosing them for us, and that is one of the collective blind spots that we're experiencing. We always proudly talk about smart city, but a smart city that's filled with uncritical minds is just an expensive collection of machines and buildings. Technology could make a city faster, but it cannot automatically make its people wiser. If we want to lead Jakarta into its next century, the most dangerous thing that we could do is surrender our attention to constant noise, because speed without direction is just chaos. We cannot just scroll our way into wisdom. We cannot just scroll our way to lead Jakarta into a better future. So, how do we bridge the gap between the Jakarta we have today to a Jakarta we want in 2027? The most important thing is to redefine reading. For many years, students are taught to see reading as an academic chore, for example, a textbook that is assigned to us, or a report that needs to be summarized. And that makes students see reading as an obligation that is too traditional and is only existed when an exam comes. We need to throw all of those assumptions away, because the real reading, it teaches us to pause. It teaches us to understand context, to actually compare many perspectives, and listening to people whose experiences are different from ours. In a world that is designed to shorten our attention spans, to actually be able to sit with a book and read for 30 uninterrupted minutes is actually an act of mental freedom. And it's a declaration that our intentions still belong to us. And when you read deeply, you actually learn one superpower that even AI couldn't replicate, is that you learn deep empathy and critical focus. For example, when you read history, you gain a foresight for you to actually recognize the consequences of past decisions and mistakes. When you read literature, for example, you enter the lives of people who experience different things in different time and place. So that teaches you many experiences and emotions which teach you empathy. And last, if you choose to read complex systems, it teaches you to examine the root of our problems that we are experiencing instead of only complaining at system. For example, like traffic, social inequality, or uneven public spaces, and so on. And we do know that reading doesn't just completely solve all of that problems, but reading allows people to know how to make a better question, because people who read deeply, they are often less likely to become manipulated by sensational headlines. They will learn how to ask better questions. When they saw news, they will learn to ask who made this information and what evidence supports us and what is the consequences if people actually believe the information. And that's why reading isn't separate from leadership. Because when a leader needs to decide, first of all, they need to understand. And for leaders to understand, they need to be willing to listen, to investigate, and to think deeply. And that is the characters of a leader that Jakarta's future needs. Let's picture Jakarta in 2027 at its 500 years old. The Jakarta 500 vision presents a city that is modern, that is inclusive, sustainable, and connected to global opportunities, while still embracing its Indonesian identity. A truly great city isn't solely measured by how high the skyscrapers are. It isn't measured by how speed its Wi-Fi is, but it is measured by the quality of the people inside it. Imagine young people, young Jakartans, creative thinkers, engineers, community builders, actually enters a public discussion not with impulsive anger, but with a reasoned evidence. And imagine citizens who do not share every piece of news they hear, but they actually wait a second to verify it first. And we need to know that those are the future that we actually need. And those future doesn't only start from corporate boardrooms, it doesn't only start from the government offices, but it starts right here in schools, in classrooms, in homes. And at the moment when we're quiet and we actually think whether we need to start scrolling more or do we need to start thinking. So, what can we do? First, we need to reclaim our thoughts. Second, we need to trade consumption to contemplation. And third, we all need to read beyond our comfort zones. And last, we need to turn all of our readings into leadership. Because reading only becomes meaningful when it changes the way we see and serve other people. 5 centuries ago, the people of Sunda Kelapa looked at coastal settlement and participated in building a gateway between Indonesia and the wider world. Today, the gateway isn't located only on its coastline, but it's located in our minds. It's located in our commitment to knowledge and courage to think critically, and our refusal to actually live in a surface level life. Jakarta at 500 does not need more commentators who merely react to every headline. We actually need architects of ideas, engineers of solution, and a generation that has read deeply enough to imagine and build a better city. So let us all be the generation who stops skimming the surface of life. A generation who reads deeply, thinks briefly, and leads responsibly. Because Jakarta's future will not be created by the people who receive the most information, but it's created by the people who understand, questions, and transform it into actions. Read today, lead the future, and together, let us build a Jakarta worthy of its next century. Thank you.